But when you leave out socialism and you talk about the benefits of free education for all, college for all, Medicare for all, and leave out the fact that that is socialism, it scores very well in polls. And Republicans would be wise to remember that and distinguish that. What do you think?
Right. Well, this is why it's so important to not just talk about these big, broad concepts like socialism versus capitalism, but actually press candidates and politicians on what they mean when they talk about socialism. Because a poll that I just read found that only 10% of American voters viewed socialism as positively, which should give you some encouragement. But then how do you square that with the platform of many of the 2020 Democrat candidates are pushing right now with these massive programs like the Green New Deal, Medicaid for all, free college, that quite frankly we can't afford? And I have to disagree with your former guest. We only spend 15% of our GDP on or of our federal spending on military versus healthcare alone, which we don't have Medicare for all right now, already accounts for over 28%.
No, and I had gone in the interview with him to talk about entitlement spending that's now, dwarfing, over half our budget. But having said that, Dan, one issue that comes up is that he believes, Cornell believes, and a lot of other people believe, and he's a big supporter of Bernie Sanders, that someone like that could and would get elected. That despite what you're hearing, there's more support for this and quite a base of support for this where he could win. What do you think of that?
Well, Bernie Sanders did well, at least against Hillary Clinton in the last election, but that was when we were coming out of the Great Recession. And a lot of the millennials who lived through the Great Recession, their job prospects were really quite awful through the 8 years of the Obama presidency, when economic growth really never got much above 2%. So that was the period in which socialism became to seem attractive to a lot of these younger voters. Now, after the last 2 years, I mean, Cornell West was talking about good-paying jobs. The economy is producing good-paying jobs right now with wage growth growing. So I think the appeal, Bernie Sanders' appeal, the socialistic argument right now, is going to have a lot less strength so long as the economy keeps going at the level that it is right now, producing real jobs for real people, as Cornell West suggested.
It's interesting, too, Michael Kayes, and this issue of socialism, but capitalism doesn't poll that well, depending on the demographic and group, I understand. But it has lost public support about 10 points in the last 10 years. That's a point a year. What's going on?
I think that's right. I mean, most people don't know how to define capitalism and socialism. Each side, the left tries to make capitalism seem like it's nothing but greed. The right seems to make socialism seem like it's nothing but the old Soviet Union or Venezuela. But one of the things that Dan misses is that every recent poll I've seen shows Bernie Sanders actually beating Donald Trump in a head-to-head election. It's narrow, but despite the fact that he's the only proclaimed socialist in the race. And I think what you said at the beginning of this segment, Neil, is really important, that most Americans like the kind of things that democratic socialists are for. They like the idea of a right to medical care. They like the idea of a right to decent housing, of education that's good education, that they're higher education, that their parents can afford. And they like the idea, I think, also of environmental protection as the world is more and more threatened by climate change. So the problem, of course, is the S word got a very bad reputation, right, deservedly so. During the Cold War.
It's a very good point, Kelsey. Back to you on this point about, I care, whether you're socialist minded or capitalist minded. I do know that we're running a big old debt. It's $22 trillion. I mean, there's a big concern whether China starts selling things off, even though they're a fraction of that debt. It's still a big worry that we owe so much that, it'd be wonderful to spend on any one of these priorities or accommodation they're in. And taxing the rich, or anyone else for that matter, isn't going to get you there. But where do you see this going?
Look, Americans like the idea of free stuff until you tell them the cost of all that free stuff. Then the polling on all these different programs sharply declines. Medicare for all, for example.
Unless they're not the ones paying for it, right? I mean, if someone treats me out to dinner, I order 2 appetizers, 3 desserts, lots of wine, because someone else is paying for it. But that mindset would change, would it not?
But we have to be honest about what these programs are. We're not talking about small social programs. We're talking about government takeover of entire industries. And when you have programs that massive, of course it's not going to be affordable for only the rich to pay for it.
But Republicans abuse the privilege as well.